Now, let's talk about small businesses. Last week, there was a launch. The Financial Reporting Council launched the Corporate Governance Guidelines for Small and Medium Enterprises. And they did that, or they're working on that alongside the Convention on Business Integrity. So we have the Director of Programs for Convention on Business Integrity joining us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Emmanuel Busa joins us to tell us more about this corporate governance guideline for small businesses. Good afternoon, Mr. Busa, and thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
So first of all, we'd like to know the essence of all of this, because, I mean, when you talk about small businesses, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the issue of funding. So now you're talking of corporate governance guidelines, and I'm wondering, how does that help small businesses?
I think that's a very important question. As we start, let me start by saying that the corporate governance guidelines is launched. It was launched last Friday. It's been in the works for the past 12 months, working in partnership with the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, which is the agency responsible for obviously improving and implementing corporate governance in Nigeria, and also done in partnership with the United Nations Global Compact. So specifically, why is it relevant? It's important for the SME sector for the reason you mentioned. The harsh economic reality in which SMEs operate mean that it's important for them to identify ways of improving their governance and make them viable as businesses. So how do they also manage risk? How do they respond to the current environment in which they're struggling to access cash, to access finance to be able to do their businesses? So the governance guidelines create a set of standards that enables them to be able to identify ways of improving their businesses, but also managing their businesses in a way that is risk-based. So identifies risks, manages risks, prepares them to be able to get whether it's investor credit, whether it's improving their operations, whether it's responding to risks that could damage their reputation or the way they operate in the markets in which they operate, and in ways they also expand.
Unfortunately, I think we have a little bit of technical hitch right there with Mr. Bosa. I do hope we could get him back, and especially at this time where the issue of climate change seems to be inculcated, into the issue of funding, the need for funding, the request for funding. It's also being joined there. Mr. Bosa, I see you're back. Do you want to complete your thought? But I'm very curious about the issue of climate change and funding. It seems that's also becoming a requirement, if you want to access fund, and even talking about corporate governance.
Absolutely. Talking about climate change, it's a bit high level for some SMEs because we're trying to cover SMEs across the spectrum. So whether it's nano, micro, small, and then you talk about the medium. So essentially, in terms of accessing climate change fund, it goes back to the same thing. During the launch last week, the Executive Secretary of the Financial Reporting Council made a very important point, which is this. The issue of finance is not the fundamental challenge faced by SMEs. The issue of governance that enables them to tap into that financing is the main problem. So if you don't have the books that demonstrate that you've been paying tax as a corporate citizen, if you do not have the governance rules that enables you to hire the right kind of staff, if you don't have the governance rules to ensure that if a company wants to invest in you or in governance practices that enables that when companies want to invest in you, they see that you have a track record how you do business, that in itself creates risk. So before we come to issues of ESG, environmental, social, and governance around climate change, a lot of businesses need to, first of all, build the foundations to ensure that they're functioning well. And then, of course, as part of that arrangement, take into account the importance of the economic, the social, the environmental, and the governance considerations, and then make sure that they're strong enough to be able to tap into the funding that they require. And that's what this guidelines is designed to address. Even as much as how do you plan for succession? When it's a family-owned business and you have the owner-operator about to transition out and have the next layer in, how do you manage that transition? How do you make sure that you have the rules in place, you have a board?
All right, I think we just have to end it there, unfortunately, with Mr. Emmanuel Bosa, the Program Director of Convention on Business Integrity, telling us about that corporate governance guideline for SMEs, small businesses. It's obviously a conversation we'll have to take up another time.